Hello and welcome back to the Peace Grows Here podcast. I'm your host, Yelena Pilates, and today's topic is all about how we can create spaciousness in our schedules so that we can take the time to regulate our nervous systems and really give it rest that it requires to fuel our efforts in all areas of our lives. And it's not going to be a podcast episode where I'm going to be teaching you specific techniques if that's what you're going for. It's more so about inspiring you by sharing my own journey, by sharing different ideas about what spaciousness actually means to create necessary boundaries in your life in whichever way you can do it. Because I ultimately believe that we all have innate wisdom about what's good for us. And my goal as a therapist in my practice is to create a container where you can tap into that wisdom. So, by listening to this episode, what I hope to create is that atmosphere in your own mind that will be conducive to you sitting down and really thinking where in my life I can create more opportunities for myself to just be, to process, to reflect, to experience, more opportunities to be present. And of course, it's all in the name of our well being, emotional and physical one. And to be honest, this topic of spaciousness and having time to do the things that we want to do that are productive, but in a way of bringing us nourishment outside of being productive at our work is a multi-layered one. Is a political issue, it's a spiritual issue, it's a psychological one. And in today's episode, I'm going to be particularly talking about the spiritual and more so psychological layers of it. Just let me give you a quick overview of what I mean by our ability to make time for ourselves to just be and breathe as a political issue. We live in a climate of capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. All of those powerful forces that shape our society have been in play for quite some time. And I truly believe as a social worker, they are creating a context where it's tricky. It can be quite challenging. First of all, allowing ourselves to make the time for us to rest because we are in this race to produce some more for ourselves, of course, in the first place, but also for shareholders of all kinds of corporations that are out there that feed us with those images and ideas that we just have to be more at all times, which requires us to do more so that in that process we forget that we are actually human beings and we're not human doings. Just sit with that for a moment. I don't remember when I read it for the first time, but it was really, really necessary for me to remember at that moment that I am a human being. I'm so much more deeper, so much more multidimensional than anything that I ever do and present to the world, which is all about doing, doing, and doing. We are living in a society that definitely prefers doing and forgets the beingness that is the foundation of our soul. I don't even have a word for it. The word that I have is being. The foundation of us being is being. It's the spaciousness that we allow ourselves in those moments when we take a deeper breath, when we read a book and just savor every moment of it, read it just for the sake of pleasure, when we meditate, when we watch our kids play, when we do something like staring in the sky and just taking it all in. That's the foundation that our societies slowly but slowly but surely is not necessarily taking away, but the ideal is that we supposed to aspire to make it difficult for us to cherish and just be aware of that very important part of our life that our nervous system requires to strive, to thrive as well. That striving, exactly, is not necessarily all good for thriving at all times. And that is a big part of course, of why is it so important to find the time for ourselves. But it's a little bigger of a topic than what I prepare for today, that political climate. Definitely going to go back to it at some point. But in terms of spiritual and psychological layers of that spaciousness that we can invite back into our life, in terms of psychological one, let me start with that out of those two. When we have anxiety, when we're stressed out, we have this compulsion just to cram things in, whether it's our to-do list, whether it's just the thoughts where we start overthinking and problem solving and nonstop, there is this drive just to multiply, perpetuate the mental activity, which is ultimately is not necessarily conducive to our feel better. And of course, it stems from our nervous system becoming dysregulated and shifting into that fight or flight response, which is all about acting, a sense of urgency or rushing, doing it now. And that energy is necessary. It's all very much good for us when we are in a throw of our day, solving one thing after another. But at the same time, we need to learn how to find a balance and rein it all back in to that moment when we actually can do it from a place of enjoyment. And that place of enjoyment, in my opinion, requires to be able to find that spaciousness and reclaim it. And in terms of the spiritual layer to this issue, and that's also another one that I'm going to leave for the some other time, because primarily today I'm going to be talking about the psychological part of that ability of ourselves to find that spaciousness within our day. But in terms of spirituality, there is this idea that we are a being on the collective level. We are consciousness, we are awareness. And that awareness doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. It can just sit there and be fully complete and whole and perfect. And my flavor of that spirituality is Buddhism, which is all about Buddha nature that we all endowed with just as we come into this world. And that doesn't require us to do anything to be better in any shape or form, because we are what we are in that deep level. And when I tap into that spaciousness of recognizing of I am complete and whole as I am, as I am right now, and it's it's so nourishing. It also can be extremely uncomfortable, because it reminds us that underneath all of that frantic activity that we are compelled to, or not necessarily even compelled to, but we forced to engage ourselves into because of those three forces, the political forces that I mentioned prior to that, there is that call to just wind down and relax and be present to this magnificent, for the lack of a better word, a layer of what we are that doesn't ask for anything, that is there at all times. And that is, for me, the spiritual layer of that spaciousness that I definitely have been tapping into a lot recently. And I definitely want to make it a bigger part of my content and the conversation that I bring into the world. So, if nothing else, I hope that this particular episode will inspire you to delve, yeah, it's not, oh, yeah, delve into this particular topic of spaciousness and really chew on it and sit with it to see where in your life you can create those opportunities to be more and do less. And for me, and let me start with a story, and then I'm going to get into like that whole idea of how you can be doing it more in your life by just listening to my example of that. I believe that we learn by listening to other people's stories. I don't necessarily feel like that my story is that important for people to learn, but I really feel like that we get inspired by seeing how people have solved the same problem that we might be struggling with. And for me, the problem that I have been solving lately by creating more time for my spiritual practice, creating more time for my journaling, which is my way of processing, attending to my mindset, which is part of my psychological self work, is realizing that I have not been able to really fully allow myself to rest and relax. There is that less restlessness and agitation that is on the background that it makes me want to cram, as I said earlier, in every space that I have in between task or in my mind. Either I start problem solving about something I need to do in my business and my life and my relationship and etc. Or I actually get going and do things instead of taking those precious self-care minutes that I know I require to regulate my nervous system. And it hit me right there and then that I am not walking my talk. And that's actually been months ago now, but I'm definitely learning how to walk my talk as my life is keeps on lifing and projects and tasks pile up. And again, I get into this overdriven kind of mode, and I can imagine that you can relate. And what I try to achieve just kind of takes over me, and I forget that, oh my God, I'm teaching other people regulate their nervous systems, that here I am going into this mode where I totally forget that I have to do it on the terms that nourish my nervous system. So, all of that being really coming up for me, and the way I have been solving it is by, first of all, saying no to even free opportunities of like taking courses and being in case studies that ultimately are going to be good for my business. A lot of that, like business coaching related. I've been approached a lot, like, do you want to be part of this free challenge, or do you want to be part of this a webinar as a recipient, not necessarily as a speaker? Um, Either one of those opportunities would require me to really set my time aside for that. And I realized that I don't have it. If I want to have anything left for myself and my garden and my friends, I really have to pull back and say no. And there is that moment of me having kind of hard time with that. The people pleaser, or however you want to call it, steps out and just like, what if I could say yes? And to be honest, I think it's more so my desire to be productive than a people pleaser in this particular case. I feel like I have been learning more to say no to people out of just a pure realization that it is absolutely necessary for my survival to pull back. It's not about me pleasing or not pleasing them, which I believe could be an issue for a lot of ladies entrepreneurs out there if you really sit and deconstruct why you have troubles to saying no. But for me, it's more so a realization that I cannot be cramming things more into my schedule in the name of productivity, in the name of me being perfectly amazing and achieving more and more. So for me, it's a high achieving mindset that I have been really enjoying for the longest, but I really need to balance it out. So perhaps you can relate to that. Maybe you one of those high achievers that also like to do more things and learn more things, that are constantly bombarded with an irritation to do so. But you got to allow yourself some time to pull back and realize that you got to rest. We all have cycles, especially ladies. We go through cycles every month, and our whole life is a big cycle of ebbs and flow of our energetic capacity at all times. So there's one way I've been realizing, okay, this is how I create more spaciousness and pleasure in my life by saying no, and to also starting to do things slower. Do things slower. Even if there is a day when I don't really have time apart from my, let's say, spiritual practice in the morning, which is my must do, it has to happen. This is something I don't compromise on. But a lot of times it's not really that enough for me. I really love to do a little more throughout the day. But let's say my day looks like there is no time. If I'm not at working with my clients, I'm creating content. If I'm not creating content, I'm like cooking or like doing some other house related or a garden related work. My way of taking care of myself in that time is to do things slower, actually savor them, actually savor making a bed. Mind you, for me to able to do so, I have to really shift in that mindset of realizing that this is important as the rest of my life. This is important as creating content of my business. Yes, it can feel like this, just another thing to do, like a chore, right? Doing dishes, making food. When we are so driven, when we want success and when we want to create impact with our business, and when we're scaling, we are so oriented towards that full-heartedly for all the good reasons. So we start resenting the fact that we need to like make a bed and do all of those other things that part of our life that support everything else ultimately. So I realize that for the people that I have been working with, for my clients, it have been an adjustment that some of them have to make to really pull back and realize that this is a part of us nourishing ourselves, making bed, doing dishes. I don't know if all of you out there fan of dishes. I have to say that I love doing dishes when I have the time. Let me give you this groundbreaking statements because actually I turn washing dishes into this self-care practice as much as possible. What I don't like, and this is where I'm rising, it's not an activity itself, any one of them, any one of the chore related, is when I have to do it rushed. So perhaps you can think back at how you do things and realize that when you do things at your own pace, you can find pleasure in even doing dishes. If you consider yourself of like, oh, I'm just this person that I don't like those things. Fair enough, it might be well true. You know, I don't judge if you don't like doing dishes, totally understood, but perhaps it stems from you having a hard time to do it at a pace that you like. Because I found for myself, as soon as I just allow myself to really feel the sensations of the water running down my hands, or when I make the bed, like feeling the texture of the fabric of my blankets and my sheets, actually everything in my system slow downs. It's one of great psychological exercises of grounding. Actually, when you notice five different things around you and really use your sight and your ability to feel the texture of things and noticing the sounds, this is an exercise of grounding in the present moment that a lot of people do to bring their nervous system regulation under control. And that's just one of many ways of doing it without necessarily stepping out of your general life flow, is when you really notice the sounds of the water, feel the water running down your hands, feel those plates, those glasses that you're washing, or when you make a bed, hearing the sounds of just new sheets and how they go on top of the bed. And there's so many things that we can think of where we are have this where we do have this opportunity to be present. So maybe you can think of those opportunities in your life where you can bring that presentness in just a very menial tasks and create actually a little bit of joy and pleasure doing them, really grounding into that moment. Sometimes I'm just even invoking gratitude for my ability to be able to do those things and savor them. There is something very nourishing in ability to be grateful for the things you have, the bed you have, the dishes you have, the food that you just have eaten and prepared. So it can go really, really deep in this way. So saying no, there's one thing. Saying yes to what so-called chores and turning them into those activities that you can actually enjoy and be present with, and just allow your thoughts to kind of melt away and be with your breath and all the sensations that you're feeling. Then the next one is I really love to do pauses in between tasks. And what I mean by that is not necessarily you like, oh, okay, I'm done with responding to my emails. And now I'm gonna just take a few minutes and do something else. If you, that is more so like self-care related than anything else, that is not necessarily any anything that is chore related. It's not like, oh, I have this few minutes, I'm gonna go sweep the floor. I definitely done that. That's not the pause I'm referring to here. It can be as simple as taking a few deep breaths, like closing your eyes, sitting at your desk, taking a few deep breaths, and really just dropping into your body, into the sensations, and inviting yourself to really relax into your breath. And this is my number one. And this is all I'm doing. That's what I mean. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be necessarily that 15 minutes walk that you take. If you have time for that, amazing. I'm here working with a schedule that is very full. And sometimes I don't have time to do any kind of walks for 15 minutes or so. If I do, I do them. But sometimes all I have time for is to really put my hands into my heart or give myself a self hug and take those three free deep breaths and really enjoy them, really savor them. Be with yourself, feel the weight of your body, how you're being supported on your seat, noticing again all the sounds and all the sensations. And then coming back into the room and get going with your day full on. Here we go. And again, be creative. Think about the ways that you can implement those small pauses and sprinkle them into your day in some very unassuming way. And lastly, the spaciousness that I've been cultivating a lot lately is I give space to what I quote unquote call problems, even financial problems. Those I think the hardest to give space to, especially if we're dealing with deadlines. But when we're not dealing with any deadlines, actually, my husband and I are discussing something right now that we want to invest into, and he's really like going back and forth, and there is a lot of uncertainty about what to do. And yesterday he said something to me that I would otherwise jump on and really kind of want to discuss right there and then. But I saw that he was in between of doing things, he was rushing out of the door. And I realized that I need to give this space right now. And for first of all, I need to give him space to do what he needs to do, but more so I need to give space to this problem that we're solving finance wise and take it day by day. Take it conversation by conversation and not trying to resolve it everything right now, which is what anxiety wants you to do. It's so uncomfortable without being uncertain about something, but the unknown, which mind you, totally understandable, especially when you're dealing with finance. which means your survival and safety. It hits really close to home, meaning our nervous system regulation, which is all about safety and survival. And at the same time, we have this ability to invite ourselves to relax into spaciousness and bring yourself back to this realization that I can handle it. I can handle on my own pace, and I don't have to go into this emergency mode right now. All I need to do is actually regulate. And this is what I did at the moment when I really just want to put everything aside, try to solve this right there and then. I was like, okay, Liana, take a moment, breathe, pause, come back to what you know about nervous system and know that you're going to be okay no matter what. And that is something that I tell myself in my mind. We all can benefit from self-talk, which is not necessarily think happy thoughts, think unrealistically happy thoughts that are made of clouds. No, what I mean is by reminding yourself that you are capable, that you are resilient, and you are, believe me, you are, even in the hardest moment of your life, which you had plenty, have had plenty by now. You found your way to be resilient and strong. And I know that you are like that. So there's also something that we can do besides regulating our nervous system by somatic techniques like breathing and giving ourselves hugs and shaking and dancing and all of that body related techniques that are extremely important to do because we cannot think our way out of anxiety. But it's also very important to find the self-empowering self-talk that changes the tune in our mind to like, I got this, I'm capable. And whatever else you want to tell yourself to tap into that strength that you have there that is just easily overlooked, unless, again, we give ourselves some space to find it, to call upon it. Um, yeah. So let me just give you a quick summary of what I talked about today. And funny enough, as I'm saying all of those things, I'm like, hey, I was supposed to give you like a context, more so like an inspiring food for thought for you to come up with your own ideas by telling you the story of my life of how I discovered all of those body related tools and spirituality and psychology. There is a lot to it in my own story that I'm just realizing now that brought me to this place. And I know there's a lot of in all of your ladies' stories, how you came to use the tools that you're using now, all about that innate wisdom. But I guess I have to save it for some other time because what I end up doing is actually getting to those practical tools of how you can actually take all of that inspiration to be spacious and put it into actions, which is ultimately what we want. So I hope this episode was helpful to you, even though I didn't do what I was saying I was going to do initially. So again, saying no, doing things at a pace that you enjoy, taking pauses in between your tasks, and also creating spaciousness around just quote unquote problems that you're dealing with, allowing yourself to make space, to step back, regulate, give yourself some empowering words, and when the time is right, to re-engage. That should be, I feel like, our number one dance that we do with just life problems, because anxiety will makes us just like throw ourselves into it and make decisions out of that crammed mindset, which is not necessarily in the most optimal place to make the best decisions. So the idea is step back, take your pause, really drop into your body in whichever way you like to do. For me, it's nature and yoga. For you, it can be something else. Really sprinkle those all around your day. Take time for you because ultimately, every moment that you put into yourself, you put into everybody else and everything else that you're working on in your life. Everything in your life will be better off if you take care of yourself. So please, if nothing else, take it away from this episode, the fact that you deserve, you not even deserve, you are deserving. It means you have to work for it and prove yourself in any shape or form to get it. No, you are born with that spaciousness within you that requires you to attend to it, to nurture it, to feed it with creating those opportunities just to be you as you are, perfectly whole, complete, remembering that you are a human being first and foremost. You can go out and be a human doing all you want, but really come back to your center by creating the space, by creating opportunities to breathe and be. And here you go. If you're one of those people who have hard time sliding into that beingness without some help, first and foremost, or you want to try new ways of doing that, I believe a perfect way of doing that is guided meditation. And it's not because I have them available for you to download if you sign up for my newsletter. It's because I truly believe that guided meditation is just like this perfect in between of not doing anything and doing something. It allows you to feel like you're being guided, you kind of productive in this way, and it allows you to relax into that spaciousness instead of just being thrown into it, which something a lot of people have hard time doing when they just jump into meditation right away, the one that where you just focus on your breath. If you come from being very actively mental and just in your life into that meditative space, you need something as a bridge in between. As that's just a trick that I give to people who want to meditate because your nervous system needs a little more to slow down. So if you are, as I said, looking for new ways to create that spaciousness in a gentle way, or you're one of those people who need to slowly shift your gears from being active to being more in a resting mode, go on my website. I'm going to put it in the show notes, which is mybloomingheart.com. And it has a freebie that I have there. If you put your email address and your name, it will send you an email with a link to my Google Drive with those 3 meditations that all about relaxation, taking mental vacation, quieting your mind, healing anxiety. And bi-weekly is how often I send my emails. Sometimes I send it 1 or 2 in between those bi-weekly newsletters, but since I'm one of those people who hate getting too many emails, I don't send that many of them. I also pack them with tips and tricks for healing anxiety and creating more calm in your life. And I believe that people need time to implement them. And I believe you need more than a week sometimes, more even a month. So I found my middle ground there and I send them bi-weekly. And I hope that they continue to serve my community and you because they all just about the same thing, finding healing, finding wholeness, finding nervous system regulation. And you can unsubscribe at any time if you feel like, oh, I need a break from her. Say no. I'm not going to be offended. I'm all about helping you to create calm and peace in your life in your own terms. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, check out my website for those meditations. And if you have any questions, or if you're inspired to participate in the free self-care challenge that I do on my Instagram, and I give away sessions with me for those who participate actively, go on my Instagram, My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy, and check it out there. I do it like 1 week every month. And it's all about, again, helping you to implement those self-care times. And if you hear suddenly there's like a bird singing, quote unquote, and my space here is a coqui frog that was brought to Hawaii for Puerto Rico, and they're quite loud. So I think it's just letting me know that it's about the time I should wrap up and be done with all of my invitations because I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm giving you those meditations and then I'm telling you, hey, there's self-care challenge. I think I'm doing one of those things that I'm aversive to when people give me too many options. So I'm just going to stop right there. Wish you an amazing day. Thank you for so much for tuning in. If you found this valuable, please share it with someone who can definitely use an inspiration to create more space and self-care in their time. I feel like it's most of us, and I'm going to be tuning back to you in 2 weeks with another solo episodes. Next week we have a guest interview, so please circle back in next Wednesday because we're going to be back with more wisdoms from other ladies entrepreneurs who are working as hard as you are and have some awesome things to share. Thank you so much.